You may even get tired of winning, and you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the SATURLABE. Time for a nice cozy one. We are going to SATURLABE. SATURLABE, SATURLABE. This is a good life. This is a good life to live, patriots. We get to sit down and consume some epic propaganda produced for us by one of our own. We're propagandizing ourselves tonight, this afternoon, whatever time it is for you at the current moment. You know that AI clanker metal remix of it's kind of like gothic metal remix of Cranberries Zombie. The only bad thing about it is that it ends like right when it's starting to really get good, right when it's really getting into it, and then it ends. I'm like, I mean, it does at least it doesn't end super abruptly. Some of those AI songs there's several that I can't even include in as suggestions for EWBSX because they just cut really abruptly at the end of it, and it's an extremely dissatisfying experience. The songs are amazing; they're such good covers, remixes, reproductions. You just can't even tell they're AI. They're just so good. And then they just end, and it leaves you going, that's the sound you make. Someone please do not clip that. So I had some a really great playlist that I was putting together today for the pre-show, because this is one of my roles in the EWBSX universe is putting together the EWBSX playlist for the pre-show for the ASTROLABE. And I was putting it together today, and then there's a few different software pieces I have to use to make it happen, and just stopped working for whatever reason. And so the workflow got completely disrupted, and then Amy and Eastwood needed to go. They're going to a neighbor's party tonight, 65th birthday. They were up this morning making a birthday card for her. So Amy and Eastwood are headed over there for the party. So I was in the middle of trying to get some of this technical stuff, and then I couldn't get videos to play on X. I had to install an update on my computer and sit there and wait for it. And so getting out later than usual, but it would not be a lab if it was not later than usual. So I am here and got a few things I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna make a habit of this now with the pseudo waves. Is I'm gonna put them on the back end of a show where I can split them off cleanly with the recording, because they're just all getting blocked on YouTube completely now. They're not, I don't think it's threatening the channel, but they're just like, the last couple have gotten 40 views because they're only visible in like 3 countries in the world. And it's like Russia, Belarus, and some other country. So, you know, I love my listeners from Russia and Belarus. There are a couple, actually. There are a couple that are over in that area, but I love those listeners. I love those viewers. But you know, it's not worth it. Everyone else is being deprived of it. So what I'm going to do is just split the pseudo waves on, bolt them on the back end of a lab, split them off, and then I'll upload them separately as separate files. So they'll go to the podcast feed. If you just want to listen to the audio, I know some people do that. If you just want the audio of the pseudo wave, then you can get that on the podcast feeds. Or also, if you want to watch it, the place to watch it will be either Kick, if you want to do the replay watching on Kick, or Substack. Those would be the places to find the replays of the pseudo wave. You can watch them live on X. I guess you could go watch the recording of it on X as well, if you really wanted to do that. But I know that the UI for watching replays on both X and Kick there's not everyone loves it. So Substack is slick. I've never had any problems with Substack, whether it's listening or watching. So if you haven't taken the Substack plunge, that might be something that might be worthwhile. I didn't expect that the audio and visual experience on Substack would be as convenient and slick as it is. So I've actually probably split my own podcast listening. It's probably like 60% YouTube, And then it's like 20% Substack and 20% podcast. So yeah, Substack is very good. So if you haven't gone to Substack yet, then you can go follow me on Substack, kingpill.substack.com. It's free to follow. There is a paid option as well if you want to comment on the posts. That's just there. It's not something I'm uploading stuff there, but I'm not actively monitoring it and everything. So that's just another vector if you want to support the show that way. Or if enough action happened over there, if enough people started subscribing and engaging over there, then I would put more time and effort into it. So you can you can follow for free, or you can subscribe, and that'll be the best place to watch the SATURLABEs. Well, not the SATURLABEs, the SATURWaves. The SATURLABEs, I'll have half of them posted up to YouTube like normal, and then the other half will go to Substack. Okay, so for the first part of the what I have here for you today, I got just a couple little one-off headlines. I've got one funny thing here from Maverick Darby by popular demand. Several people sent this one to me and wanted it, suggested it for the show. Which I'm very glad for because I wasn't able to spend as much time on X yesterday. So I've got that, and then I got a couple of one-off headlines touching on some stories we've talked about before. And then I've got a video that I'm probably gonna end up playing most of it. Maybe at least the first 2/3 to 3/4 of it. It is Joaquin Flores talking to Crypto Rich just recently, talking about Venezuela. Now, it's the second half of the conversation, and I really encourage you guys to go listen to the first half of it. It's on Crypto Rich's Politics channel. There will be a link in the podcast description or on the Substack post for this episode to this video, Crypto Rich Politics. If you want to find his YouTube channel. He's been posting some really interesting interviews lately. And he's just a very pleasant, basically kind of like a reformed lib. He very much has kind of a lib sensibility about him, but he's very interested in sovereignty, very anti-war. So he's very libertarian, but then he's also very much immersed into the Alex Craner, Susan Kokinda, Tom Luongo sort of VM Burlingame sort of worldview. And so he brought on this guy, Joaquin Flores, who I've heard for a little while, and I've followed him on Telegram for a little while. And he's a very compelling character. Obviously, he's a self-described intelligence agent, former intelligence, worked in intelligence, and so you can take that for what it's worth. I'm taking his words basically at their face, and I don't really know a whole lot about him except that he's been extremely canceled. To the point where he's incredibly canceled, and I guess maybe just hasn't pushed back against it all that much. He's just restricted himself to Telegram, but he's very he produces a lot of content, very prolific. So I've been following him for a little while, and this conversation that they had was very interesting. The first half of it that I'm not going to play for you guys, you can go listen to that on your own. He talks about the geopolitical wranglings that are happening with China, Russia, and the United States, kind of for various baked-in interests are beginning to align themselves together with Europe as the one who's left out. He's very City of London pilled. He's very clued in on every aspect of this conversation, and I think he threads a very interesting needle with it. He talks about the creation of hyper reality and the way the big global foundations, the Mike Benz type of world, the way that they've intentionally they've laid out all their goals that they want to accomplish, and then they're very well aware of the way you can create a hyper reality and propagandize things to be manifested as real. And so they're kind of trying to manifest their world in real time. So it's kind of what he talks about in the first half, and then in the second half here, Crypto Rich turns to Venezuela and says, so what's going on with Venezuela, given this dynamic that's happening with Trump and Putin and Xi more or less serving as the tip of the spear for three primary regional factions that are beginning to align together for a matter of sort of interlinked incentives. And so then what role does Venezuela play in this? He has some very interesting speculation on it, and I haven't been able to fully untangle it. This is one of those where I need to go for a long walk and think about it for a while. But I was listening to this last night, and I was like, oh, I want to get this. I have some thoughts on it, and I want to get it out there. as we're kind of looking at things are starting to rumble around Venezuela and also Ukraine. The deal that's being made there. Keith Kellogg has been relieved, has left his post, and has been replaced by the guy's name just escaped me. Driscoll, Dan Driscoll, I believe is his name, who I've talked about here on the show before. I remember going and doing a little kind of dig into his background, and he is a former classmate and friend of JD Vance, and he's now the one running point. He's the diplomat running point on the Ukraine negotiations that are happening right now. So all these different, you can't evaluate any of these major flashpoints in a vacuum. The Russia-Ukraine negotiations have implications in both Venezuela and Israel. The stuff that's going on in Israel and Gaza has implications with China and with Russia, and with Europe, obviously. All of these different, you can't just run one of these to ground. You have to go at all of them at the same time and try to paint a picture of that ties all of these different things together, because it's not so simple as just there's this faction against this faction. There is no one single faction. There's many different factions that have aligned and disaligned interests. And some of them are disaligned, but not antagonistic. And so then some of them there's like this big spider web of interests, and the power is sloshing around right now. Lots of people are jockeying, and there's lots of intelligence games being played at all different levels and layers. So you can't go like too completely schizo, because you'll get lost in the sauce. But you also can't be like, no, what we see, what the most obvious understanding of everything is obviously true. Like you can't take everything completely at face value, no matter what your position is, because every single one of these propaganda narratives that exists out there is well aware of all the others. We've had a complete information saturation, so everyone's doing intelligence on everyone else all at the same time, and this process is accelerating. There's lots of different factions that are all beginning to split apart from each other or align with others. This is what a realignment looks like. We're living through it now. And so there's going to be some stuff that comes out that in retrospect you'll be like, oh yeah, that was really obvious. You could totally see that coming. And there's other stuff that's going to be like, holy hell, I never even imagined that could happen. We've already had some of those things. There's going to be more. So if your assessment of the terrain in front of us right now is too condensed into one single narrative, then you're not going to see the whole picture. I think that's probably the gist of what I'm getting at here. So, this perspective from Joaquin Flores actually kind of ties into some of my more schizo things I've tried to speculate on as I'm making sense of everything that I see in front of me, particularly with regard to Trump and Zionism. And I'm going to make a sort of an interesting speculative, hypothesis, put forth kind of a speculative hypothesis here, that is sort of just a beginning point. So I don't want to be held too tightly to it. But this is kind of me trying to explore this idea out loud in real time. And this video, the whole video is 27 minutes long. I'll put it on 1 1/4, and probably go through about 20 or so minutes of it. But it's the title of the video is Trump and Maduro Ally Against Israel, with Joaquin Flores. So we'll get to that here just before we do the SATURLABE, but I got to get to a couple other things first. Number one, got a couple of tips that came in overnight from a couple patriots. The first one, Hermetic Hegemony. Good to hear from this guy again.
We'll catch up on this show later. 11-month-old baby and pregnant wife monopolizing my time.
Patriot.
I thought Tucker was interviewing a Vulcan before I realized it was Nolan Haley. Bro should go easier on the tweezers, but he is fighting to keep genetics at bay.
Oh, that's funny. Thought Tucker was interviewing a Vulcan. Thank you for listening, man. I appreciate you. 11-month-old baby and a pregnant wife. we got natalism up in here. Look at my natalist patriot. Well done, sir. And then, Justine.
SATURLABE. Oh yeah, give me more Maddie.
No.
Show me Daddy Trump magnanimous masculine principle in the face of Mamdani's devouring feminine principle. Keep pushing for the union of the energies to create the philosopher's hard rock. Let's create some magic.
Well, if you want to get real meta here, thank you to Observant Slav also for resubscribing over on Kick for 6 months. One of the OG patriots. If you want to get real meta here, the masculine principle versus the feminine principle, that's actually a really useful hermeneutical framework to operate from, because you start seeing the interplay of these energies it's way down. I don't know if I would say it's the fundamental level in understanding human relations, or even kind of the nature of force in the universe, but it's very close to foundational. The masculine, I don't want to go too far off down a rabbit hole here. There's a paradox between the masculine and the feminine that you can chase your tail around on that for a really long time. And I've gone for long walks with the dog and just sat out there running these things through my head over and over and over again, and I keep finding myself chasing my own tail. So that'll be another podcast someday, perhaps. Thank you guys for supporting the show. Let me throw the tips link in here. Remember to tip your streamer. And the link, I got to look up over the soundboard here. There we go. Link is typed correctly. All right. Please do support the show. It is entirely listener supported, as is my entire life. You guys pay my bills, and you've enabled me to get this far. So I am deeply, deeply indebted to you, and I want to make the most of it. So please help keep my family employed and housed and fed, and I will keep bringing you my true sting and my schizo rambling and the pseudo waves. Thank you guys. Let's get started here with this one. A bunch of people sent this one over to me. Maverick Darby is whipping the clankers again. Lord of the Rings, 1776. Tucker Baggins and Arwen Sweeney's America First Escape. Arwen Sweeney. I see that we're going to have to get the bonk sticks out again.
Give us Tucker Catarlson Baggins.
If you want him, then maybe come claim him.
Like what?
I need an out pouch. I'm still relevant.
It's crazy they got sick-looking Tucker.
1776. America First, 1776. America First, 1776. America First,
Patriot.
1776. America First, 1776.
Woo! Yes, that is Ben Shapiro. Get fucked!
Not to be rude, but I'm still waiting on that nicotine pouch.
So true. I love our slopagandists. My brain wants to say slopagrandists for some reason. Slopagandists. Maverick Darby is way up there. Maverick Darby is no Suda. He is no adjut prop master, but he is way up there. Because the adjut prop master can do slop, and he can also wow you, grab you by the soul. He can do both. Get you a propagandist who can do both. The Somali thing we talked about, the Somali autism scam that they were running. this is related to that story from Geiger Capital. In 2023, Somalians in Minnesota sent back over $1.7 billion to their home country. More than their entire nation's budget. At the same time, they're committing massive fraud via U.S. taxpayer programs to fund it. U.S. taxpayer programs have been funding the Somali government. That's quite literally what, like, directly. More than the Somali government, because presumably the Somali government is getting funded, and they're also getting they got $1.7 billion in 2023. The Somali fraud rings have sent huge sums in remittances or money transfers from Minnesota to Somalia. According to reports, an estimated 40% of households in Somalia get remittances from abroad. 40%!
I'm just here to pay the horny posting toll. The Nosferatu movie made me want to bite into Lily Rose Depp's fat forehead like a vampire. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you for your confession, Anonymous. I haven't seen the Nosferatu movie, but I know who Lily Rose Depp is. Biting into her fat forehead. Let me play that one again.
I'm just here to pay the horny posting toll. The Nosferatu movie made me want to bite into Lily Rose Depp's fat forehead like a vampire. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Oh, that was tremendous. Thank you. Thank you, Anonymous. I appreciate you paying the horny posting toll. Speaking of paying horny tolls. No, that's the Indians, not the Somalis as much. Although, yeah, I guess the Somalis as well. Roy's Redemption. What's up, buddy?
I'm sorry, but I can't help it. I'm true-oosting.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Keep trusting. Troost away. Johnny Depp's daughter just in a vampire movie. It's the Nosferatu movie. I've heard a lot of people say it was really good. Acts as a bloodbath right now with the new location feature. I can imagine. It just dropped right before I went live, and I went and checked a couple that I was curious about, and got exactly the confirmation I expected. But I can only imagine this is like okay, let's back up on this for just a second. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but you brought it up, so I will. On one hand, this is total slop. Samoa Bob.
Hate how close the name Somalians are to Samoans. People have been calling me Somalian my whole life.
Oh man. No. That's not going to do. I know Samoa Bob. Nobody should be calling Samoa Bob Somalian. That is absurd. No, can't have that. Can't have that. That is completely unacceptable. That's in the ban jar. That's a slur right there. Yeah, that is completely inappropriate. We don't tolerate calling people such vicious slurs. Calling Samoans Somalians. Horrifying. Man. Thank you for the tip, brother. Samoa Bob, not Somalia Bob. That's right. Although that'd be a really funny alt account for you. Somalia Bob. I want to say more, but I don't want to get doxy. The Samoa homies must be protected. Protect our Samoa homies. So that this on one level, like going and looking at an account and being like, oh, he's using a VPN. Oh, is just so goofy. So I don't use a VPN because I don't care that much, but I know so many people who use VPNs. So many people. Oh, this account was created in such and such a country. Okay, maybe it means something. Perhaps, but it doesn't mean something on its own. Someone was traveling. Or someone was using a VPN when they set it up. There's on one level, this is just total slop. But on the other level, there's no way that a global media platform like X that is owned by a very controversial billionaire who is close to the current president, there is no way that they're going to suddenly start mass doxing accounts which this is like a soft dox. They're soft doxing accounts on Twitter. There's obviously high-level approved motivations behind this. This is not the platform just unilaterally choosing this. These have major political implications. This is like manufacturing political scandals. So like on one level, it's total slop, and the people who are like going around and looking at all their favorite accounts and being like about it, whether they're favorite accounts or their favorite accounts to hate, all of that is just like a complete, I don't want to say it's a distraction, but maybe in certain cases there's utility to it. But by and large, everyone's just going to go completely blow their wad on this. You're going to hear about it forever. It's also going to produce some fantastic memes. They're gonna happen. I'm sure they've already started happening. The easiest one is people that are just like photoshopping. Oh, look, this guy created his account in Israel, and it's like obviously photoshopped. Trust Blansar says, I'm just hopeful this will invalidate some breaking slop accounts, which that's the thing, is that some of those accounts, yes, it will. It will get them to a certain degree. It'll at least maybe make people think twice about it. But the net effect of what this is doing is this is shaking up the chessboard even further. This is introducing more chaos into the system. More noise. It's turning up the temperature. And the question is, to what end? Who is doing it? And it's fascinating that the way that it's being done, you can very easily, plausibly, tell two different stories. And both stories are incredibly plausible. I find myself very often kind of sliding back and forth between them. But this is what I was meaning at the beginning. Like, if you're totally over-indexing on one versus the other, or on others, if you're totally over-indexing on one, I've watched this with so many people, you are invariably going to miss signals that invalidate the one that you're over-indexing on. And I've seen this happen with a bunch of different representatives of different factions, people all arguing their own narrative. I've seen them, on all different sides, miss glaring evidence. I'm sure there's glaring evidence that I'm missing. But I've watched this happen where I'm like, okay, that data point, you should not be reading that data point that way. If you are, that means you've gotten too far into your own narrative hole, to where you're now starting to step over good data that would expand your picture. So this is kind of the same sort of thing that's on my mind with this Joaquin Flores video that I'll get to here in just a little bit. So let me pull myself back on track here, weave this back in just like my president, and just marvel at the fact that the Somali diaspora sent $1.7 billion in 2023 alone, which was more than the Somali government's budget that year. Oilfield Rando says, I want to remind you all that when the federal government finally stopped a Somali shop that was scamming food stamps 20 years ago, the ACLU sued until the Somali shop was allowed to start scamming food stamps again. Isn't this like a perfect depiction of exactly how this works? Exactly how this works. You get the ACLU that comes in and gives traitors in the judiciary an opportunity. It opens up a possibility for them to facilitate this clearly foreign-motivated siphoning away of capital from the United States for the sake of engaging in one of these age-old hotspot conflict points. This directly implicates all of the usual suspects. This implicates American Zionists. This implicates foreign Zionists. This implicates foreign bankers. Those are not the same things. That's not the same category. There are differences in that category. This implicates foreign, this implicates Europeans, European wealthy families that may or may not necessarily be bankers. This implicates a lot of different factions. This implicates traitorous factions within the State Department. This probably implicates traitorous factions within the probably like arms sales, because I imagine what a lot of that money is going back to is getting funneled back into military contractors. That would be my guess. But all these different groups, they all have different, they overlap in lots of places. Some of them overlap more with others. But they're not all the same group with identical motivations. Another one related to this, just kind of talking about the absurdity of it. Eigenrobot said, here's life in Minnesota in 2025. My tax dollars fund AFCOM. AFCOM fights Al-Shabaab. The war makes refugees. My tax dollars fund refugees. Refugees defraud my state to fund Al-Shabaab. AFCOM funding goes up, and the cycle repeats. So, tax dollars to AFCOM. AFCOM fights Al-Shabaab, makes refugees. Tax dollars fund the refugees. So tax dollars are going to AFCOM. Tax dollars are going to refugees. Refugees defraud my state to fund Al-Shabaab to keep it going, which makes AFCOM funding go up to keep up with Al-Shabaab, and the cycle keeps repeating itself. There's a couple ways you can look at this. The first one is, holy hell, we are so completely fucked. We have been, the monster's tentacles have been burrowed so deeply into us. Or you can look at it this way. America is so rich that minor states are accidentally funding both sides of African civil wars almost incidentally as a small side effect of well-meaning social policy. You can argue with the well-meaning social policy. There's plenty of people engaged in advancing that social policy who are well-meaning. But even just leave it as this. America is so rich that minor states are accidentally funding both sides of African civil wars almost incidentally. That's how frickin' anti-fragile America is. People wildly overestimate the fragility of America. Wildly overestimate the possibility, or like how likely or how close it is that America is just going to collapse. America has tremendous inertia. For a whole bunch of different reasons we've delineated at various times in the past. The American empire is not waning. The American empire is growing in strength. But something is definitely dying. And it's killing things off as it grows. And where it grows to, what direction it grows, what method it uses to grow, all these things are not set in stone. They're already underway, they're already inevitable, but they're also malleable. Because again, power is sloshing around right now. And it's going to ultimately wind around and settle in a few different places. And it's all going to rearrange itself. And the further down it tries to rearrange itself, the more it will begin destabilizing itself, which will ultimately result in another power shifting moment where it kickstarts that cycle again. And this is going to happen over and over and over and over and over. As the system is trying to find the right balance between dynamism and stasis. And inevitably it's going to be optimizing down, and then it's going to go too far in one direction to the point where it compromises the other, which will then provoke the other. And round and round and round will go. But America has tremendous inertia. Born out of a combination of our capital markets, our infrastructure, our personality, our geographic advantages, our demographics, Not in isolation, but vis-a-vis literally everywhere else. Everywhere else is worse. So everywhere else is trying to drag America down. Trying to get their worse stink on America. As America is pulling away. The more factions jump on board to the America is pulling away side, the better they get with respect to everything else. This process is going to continue. America may pull away quickly, or America may grindingly, over a really, really long time horizon, pull away. It depends on how many people are holding it, trying to tug it back, trying to keep their stink on it. So then, your choice is, do I want to try to prevent America from pulling away? Or do I want to attach myself to it pulling away and determine what that pulling away is going to look like? But you're not gonna stop it from pulling away in whatever direction it's going to go. So again, it's a kind of a paradox here. You're not going to stop it, but also you could change it, which you might see as kind of like a form of stopping it, altering it, redirecting it. You can, but you're not going to stop it. Here's a good clip from Scott Adams talking about this is Trump's persuasion lesson, and this is where Scott's really at his best. Just he's so good when he breaks this stuff down. He talks about how Trump stole affordability from Zoran and made it his own. This is kind of what I was trying to get at yesterday. This was just Trump absorbing Zoran into his own Borg. There is a Borg that is emerging around Trump, that things are just getting pulled into his orbit. He has like a gravity to him. There's like a gravitational field that operates on his wavelength. And everything is being pulled into alignment with him. Recognize, strategize, and neutralize. Scott Adams says that's 3 for 3 of 3 of the hardest things you could do in persuasion. Recognize, strategize, and neutralize. Recognize the word, know that you have to deal with it, then totally embrace it and co-opt it and turn it into your own thing. Nobody else can do that, he says. Let me put this at 1 1/4. And let's listen.
Now you're really going to learn something. Next. You ready? Do you remember when Zoran and maybe some other people trotted out the word affordability? Do you remember what I said on my show here? And I was just swooning at how smart that was. I never heard affordability being used as the main word. Of course, it's a normal word that people use, but I never heard it used as sort of the campaign's main theme. And I thought to myself, oh my God, you can't really beat that. So what are Republicans going to do to counter that? You can't really beat affordability. It's so well chosen. It's not overused. So it's not like you remember Kerry did it when he read, nothing like that. So it's fresh. It's perfect. It's on point. Everybody feels it. It works for all kinds of categories. It's just a great word. And I don't think you can beat it. So then Trump runs into this word. He would have, I believe, exactly the same reaction to it that I did, which is, oh, crap. That's a really good word. What am I going to do about that? But, as you know, Trump is the unmatched persuasion expert of our time.
And this is one of the things, like the various different forces that are swirling around that are causing the power to shift the way it does. You can't underestimate. This is something Tucker Carlson just went on the Sean Ryan show, and it was just an absolute tour de force. There was multiple times where Sean Ryan just was like, sustained pause. Holy shit. Like, didn't even know what to say to him. Tucker was just dumping, just absolutely on fire. It was quite fascinating to listen to, but he talked about the importance of words, the importance of speech. To voice an idea into the zeitgeist is to create. And there's something that's really primal about this. I mean, Jesus is the Word of God. When God created, he spoke things into existence, and we were made in the image of God. So we can speak things into existence. And that realization that's why censorship is such a big is a move of desperation. Because it means I can't speak better things into existence, that you have superior creative power to me. So all I can do is try to prevent you from speaking. This isn't, I'm not making like a free speech case. I'm talking about the spiritual power of speech. So once you take a particular word and you frame it in a particular light, and you start associating a bunch of things to it, you can, this is what branding is. You're brainwashing people. This has been part of the brilliance of Trump, because this is it's not a science. It's an art. And you can evaluate that art and you can try and break it down scientifically to better understand it, but it will remain an art. You're kind of, when you're trying to do good branding, you're basically shooting in the dark and hoping to hit a target. And you're getting data feedback to try to triangulate where the target is, but that's what branding is. You're recognizing that there's this something in the ether. There's this thing that's out there, and I'm trying to pin it down and put containment around it, and then control it, and get people to pay attention to it, so then when I move it around, I move their attention around. That's what branding, that's what speech, that's what persuasion is. That's what I'm doing right now. Every time you have a conversation with someone, this is what you're doing. If you start paying attention, you'll notice that. Every single time you're talking to someone, you're conceiving of this thing, and then you're trying to bring their attention to that thing because you want them to do something different than what they're currently doing. Maybe stop doing something or to start doing something. Maybe that is just thinking about a thing. You want them to start thinking about a thing. You want them to stop thinking about a thing. No matter what you're trying to do is you're trying you're taking mouth sounds and associating them with mind pictures and then trying to get people's attention with them. And once you do, then you're trying to move it around so that they'll move around with you. This is just basic human communication explained in really woo-woo wizard mystical terms. Casting spells, yeah. It's also, Samo Bob, it's also why playing the liberal apology game is so important. When someone doesn't play their game, it's so powerful, even to the libs. Yes. Flicker says we don't talk about how language brings forth reality. That is what it is. And the crystal chicks will call it manifesting, law of attraction. They're looking at something that's real, which is the power of human speech and belief. Because speech is also a communication of belief. It's like directed belief, kind of. Okay, back to Scott.
Is there anything he could have done to counter the effectiveness of affordability? Anything? Is there any way to play that? I couldn't think of one. I was coming up blank, and I think about this stuff all the time. I didn't really have a good answer. So what did Trump do? Do you know what he did? If you've been paying attention for the last week, he did the smartest thing you'll ever say. He just took the word. He credited them, so he didn't say, this is my own word. He gave them credit. And then he embraced it, and he fully embraced it. He borrowed it. He stole it. He co-opted it. He embraced it. Now what? Now what do you do?
Yes, Emperor Atreides. Trump's just going to start implementing everything. I think it's probably supposed to be the left or the Dems. The Dems will try to run on. They'll have to invent policy ideas faster than he can steal and implement them. Yes. Yes. This is why I said before the elections, I said that 2025 is about this time for building up, laying the groundwork for the reordering, the restructuring of everything. And then 2026 is going to be about the economy. And he's going to pursue policies to resolve the economic issues that people aren't going to like. They're going to be things like student loan forgiveness. They're going to be lefty economic issues. He's going to take Bernie Sanders' platform from him. So, and this is the Democrats' best case, is to run on Bernie Sanders' platform. That's the best possibility that they have of absorbing market share. Because pull the volume up a little bit here. I see Superior B said that my voice is quieter than the video. So let me know if that's better. Their best case, like anybody who's half decent, would say that their best angle would be to run against the economic chaos that he creates with the tariffs and run on a populist economic program targeted at working class whites, running white people. Like that would be the best thing that they could do. So if he just takes that from them, if he runs on their platform ahead of them, they have to try to do it better than him. What has he said just recently? He said multiple times, he said, the economy is my thing. My thing is the economy. I'm the businessman. I understand the economy. I know how debt works. This is why he and Scott Bessent are able to work together. I was doing some research into the possible Fed chairs and kind of looking at some of their backgrounds. And I'm pretty convinced at this point, I'm just going to say this, I'll talk more about it later, but I'm pretty convinced at this point that the three finalists, I know Christopher Waller is being talked about a lot, but I kind of don't buy it, and I'll eat crow on that if he winds up being the next Fed chair. But I think that there are three with a wild card. And there's Kevin Hassett, the chair of the National Economic Council. I think he may be one that Trump really wants because he's just a total toady kind of. Like I think he's just very acquiescent, totally all about Trump, and will just do exactly what Trump wants. He's too much of a Trump fanboy. I think that's part of why Trump wants him. But yeah, he's a yes man. And so there's lots of rumors that Bessent doesn't want that Bessent doesn't want it to be Hassett. And I think that's probably why, because he knows how that would be perceived by markets. I think Trump really wants Bessent to do it. I think that's why it's being dragged out the way it has. I think Trump really wants Bessent. That's the wild card. And I think Bessent's refusing to do it probably for kind of the same reason. Trump basically wants to fold the Fed back under the Treasury, or under the Treasury. And have it, like having a single Treasury secretary that does both, I think that's something that Trump wants. And I think what Bessent is trying to do is to get someone who would be basically a proxy for him, but who could sort of maintain some distance. So the other two candidates would kind of have the same sort of issue. There's Stephen Mirren, who a lot of people still aren't talking about, as he hasn't been named in the list of finalists, but I think he's definitely a possibility. The Mar-a-Lago Accords guy, as sort of like a last-minute sort of bob and weave kind of thing. He's also going to get the, like, Trump is installing a sycophant at the top of the Fed. And then the other one who's very interesting is Kevin Warsh. So Kevin Warsh was very involved in the 2008 financial crisis, and he actually worked with Bernanke. He's a Republican who worked with Bernanke and was the intermediary between Bernanke and Wall Street. And so he was initially kind of a cautious proponent of the QE project that they did. But then when it continued and expanded, he was like, no, this is the Fed is starting to extend way beyond its mandate. Hermetic Hegemony.
As your House representative, stopped on Trump. He waves his massive stick around and scares the wars away. Tells my Ukrainians to dress respectfully, and makes my Europeans pay for their own wars. How am I supposed to run a respectable warehouse?
Thank you, Hermetica Gemini. Yeah, well, I'll probably talk next week about the Ukrainian thing because that's very interesting what's happening on that front. But this is I'm already going longer on this intro part than I expected to. So Warsh he ended up resigning from the Fed, from his role, and it was largely over basically saying the Fed had wildly stepped outside its mandates. He's much more of a hawk. So he would be sort of like another Jerome Powell in a certain sense. But he's also talking about how the Fed has stepped outside its mandate on things like climate change and bank regulation. I know that's one big thing that Bessent wants to wind down, and Trump wants that wound down as well. Returning the Fed to its narrow mandate, not branching out into like bank regulation and all of this debt monetization and all of that other stuff. Narrowing its mandate way down and giving much clearer price signals. This is basically what Warsh has been saying. And so he's someone that if they're trying to, he's also someone who Trump has had as an economic counselor and had been rumored. He was rumored for the Fed chair when Powell was nominated, and then he was also in talks for the Treasury Secretary role this year too. So all of these guys are all going to get the same treatment. Like, Trump's this is just Trump's sycophant, but I think it's more a matter of who is going to send off that the least, who has the most plausible case for really focusing on an independent Fed for the sake of the market stability and all that. And Warsh, I think, is one who has a very strong claim to that. Now, if that happens, there is going to be a meltdown of absolutely magnificent proportions. Why? Because Kevin Warsh is the son-in-law of Ronald Lauder. Who is Ronald Lauder? Estee Lauder. The Estee Lauder family, a business. And he is the president of the World Jewish Council. So there's a very good chance, I'm predicting there's a very good chance that the next Fed chair could be the son-in-law of the president of the World Jewish Council. Ronald Lauder is an old friend of Donald Trump's. So I'm just putting this out ahead of time so you guys can be prepared for the absolutely magnificent meltdown that's going to happen if and when that happens. I'll leave it at that for now. Let's go back to Scott.
And my guess is that behind closed doors, it was probably that word that allowed them to say, you know what, I think we can say good things about each other when we're out in that other room. Because if you're down with affordability, and I'm down with affordability, we can work together. If I told you that one of these candidates was the common sense candidate, common sense. Now that would be Trump, not Zoran. But affordability sounds like common sense, doesn't it? Because if it's not affordable, it's nothing. So it perfectly fits Trump's whole MAGA everything. It's common sense. Affordability is. And at the same time, if it's Zoran's whole, it's got to be affordable because nobody can afford to live in New York City. So it's sort of perfect for both of them. And
I suspect what's going to happen, what Trump's angle on this is, Zoran, I will help you on the affordability front. We will work together on the affordability front, and I'll ensure that you can get reelected on that basis, that you're going to have tremendous economic numbers to champion to get reelected. You're going to have to work with me on immigration. You're going to have to allow ICE to operate in your city. And you can put up a fight and a hue and cry and you can yell and do a big performative thing. But sort of like Wes Moore, Democratic governor of Maryland. Do your big and then let me do it. We're going to clean up crime. We're going to make things, we're going to make New York City safe. And you get all of your economic stuff. This is how you both insulate yourself from him, but also capitalize on his potential upside, and you own him. Because Trump could make his life a living hell if he really wanted to. He could really, really, make his life difficult. It wouldn't be electorally smart for Trump to do it, so there's a little bit of a game of chicken here. But Trump could really make his life hell if he wanted to. Or say, hey, I'll work with you on this stuff. I'll fast track new home builds. These things that we have alignment on. More than happy to work with you on those things. You got to give on this other stuff. This is what Trump is not ideological. Trump is not beholden to ideological priors. Trump is just making deals. He's going to make a deal and he's going to work with anyone. He'll make a deal with Kim Jong-un. He's like, I don't care. I'll make a deal with Bibi Netanyahu. I'll make a deal with Xi Jinping. I'll make a deal with whoever wants. But I'm going to drive a bargain. I'm going to get my pound of flesh out of the deal. So if you're going to make a deal with me, you're going to give something up. By definition, if you're working with Donald Trump, you're giving something up. And then you couple this with the sort of inevitable gravity and anti-fragility that he's amassed, and it has a distinct psychological effect on people.
Trump noticed that, apparently, and decided that he would get on that channel and that nothing could kick him off, and that once he's on there, the only thing that could happen is Zoran can leave, and he's not gonna. So since they're both committed to this affordability thing, but the president of the United States has more tools simply by being president, Zoran probably can't get to affordability without a little bit of help from a variety of places, including the president. So the fact that Trump not only noticed that the word was a high ground killer word, so the first part is hard. The first part is simply recognizing the power of that word. But the second part, oh my goodness, the second part was knowing what to do about it. It's so rare. And the third part is he executed. Because right now, I just think of affordability as something that two of our leaders have embraced, and I hope the rest of them get on board. That's 3 for 3 of 3 of the hardest things you could do in persuasion. Recognize the word, know that you have to deal with it, and then totally embrace it and co-opt it and turn it into your own thing. Nobody else can do that. That's a Trumpy thing right there. It's one for the ages. Anyway, you'll remember that one forever.
And I don't even think Scott would claim this. I don't think that Trump is doing this self-consciously. I don't think Trump would sit down and explain what he just did in the way that Scott did. Very obviously. Trump's just vibing. This is why he's not ideological. He is pure vibes. But his vibes are immaculate. He has a tremendous sense for like just winning. He just knows how to navigate virtually any situation and extract a win for himself. And his risk tolerance is absolutely superhuman, which is part of what kind of makes him so inevitable. He'll keep doing things when other people will back down or redirect themselves. He just bowls straight ahead forward, which forces the people who want to attack him into really, really awkward and uncomfortable positions, which really inevitably gets them reactive. And once they're in this reactive posture, then they're just sending up flares indicating all of their positions. And he's a master at picking those things up and incorporating them and keeping track of big, wide fields of data and information. And being able to like seamlessly drill down into a particular issue, get a gut sense of it and understand it very quickly, and then be able to just chart a course forward. And if he makes a mistake, then he doesn't dwell on it. He just moves on. This is just an innate thing about him. It makes him a little amoral, which a lot of people pick up on, and then they're like, oh, bad guy. And of course, he's done bad things and will do bad things because he's human. But if you're not factoring in this dynamic about Trump, like everyone's, there's probably fewer things that have cost people more money than betting on Trump's luck, quote unquote, running out. Scores of people have been bankrupted betting against Trump's ability to win. At a certain point, you just stop being the sucker. At a certain point, you're the sucker, not him. Here's some messaging on this affordability thing from Trump.
The American dream isn't a headline. It's not a handout or a hashtag. It's a porch light left on, a flag out front. It's what you earn through hard work and what you're free to build when your leaders put you first. I've never forgotten that. From day one, I fought for the American worker. To protect our homes, our families, we built a strong economy. So every American could plant roots, not just the privileged few, the Sunday dinners, the backyard ball games, the pride of owning a piece of this incredible nation. That's what we're fighting to protect. That's the spirit we're bringing back. And behind it all, you've got great partners, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, helping families turn hard work into home ownership, helping Americans turn dreams into something lasting, something truly their own. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, keepers of the American dream.
Keepers of the American dream. That is, that's some good propaganda right there. I don't know if that is AI. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's not a speech. It's if anything, it would be him reading a script, like they had him do a voiceover for an ad. But watching that, I feel like I'm in 1990. That reminds me of what it was like when I was a kid, and the way that it was like the kind of like the historical, traditional American values sentiment that at that time I was starting to feel draining away. But like explicitly promoting like patriotism and family and groundedness in your home and the sense of ownership and pride in your country. This is a sentiment that I haven't seen being produced, whether cynically or not. I haven't seen this sentiment being produced in a really long time, and I think my sense is that me, as steeped in cynicism as I am, the average person who hasn't brain rotted themselves with bizarre corners of the internet the way I have, I imagine that this is very compelling. This resonates very much with your average normie. This is from Benny Johnson, is the one who posted it. He's working with the Trump administration on messaging on this housing front. So there's lots more stuff that's going to come from that. And I think that the whole Fannie and Freddie, like you can't evaluate the Fannie and Freddie thing, I think, without the Ukraine-Russia dynamic and the Venezuela dynamic and the Gaza-Israel dynamic, because there's all these, when you're dealing with major power centers, you're talking about the launch of an operation like the Fannie Freddie thing. You're going to have people with vested interests, or who need to have vested interests in that, who want a little more stability and security and predictability on these other fronts. So all of these things, they all map to each other, and you can't you can't treat one of them as exclusive over the other ones, because they all implicate each other. Right. Mr. Sue, there is no foreign and domestic policy. There is just policy. Yes, that's exactly it. There is just policy. If you're critiquing Trump for spending too much time focused on foreign policy, you're looking at politics too much like a libertarian. There is just policy. And then just a quick update here on this thing with the seditious Democrats. This video from Alyssa Slotkin and these other Democrats talking about how encouraging military members to disobey illegal orders. I saw this as like it's a very obvious, transparent attempt at stoking a color revolution, but they're like technically, legally coloring within the lines, and so the current Trump administration doesn't have a whole lot that they can do on this front. But so I just kind of wrote it off. You know, Trump's gonna do his thing. He's gonna take the heat on himself and just kind of keep plugging forward. But I've seen more and more military accounts being like, this is just completely unacceptable. This is completely beyond the pale. This has crossed a threshold that's totally unacceptable, and something needs to be done about this. So I just kind of written it off, but now I'm kind of like, okay, maybe I'm going to keep this tab open and kind of see what comes of this. Here's Trump talking to Brian Kilmeade of the Just Kill the Homeless floor on Fox. Here's Brian Kilmeade interviewing Trump, talking to him about it.
A little bit later, but I also want to talk about something else that matters a lot, and that's that tape that those veterans and Elise Slotkin put out, talking about urging, I guess, or reminding our troops that they don't have to obey orders. Listen to a little of it.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
So you get the spirit of it. Your reaction was pretty direct. This is really bad and dangerous to our country. The words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors. And you wanted to say punishable by death. So people thought that you were saying death to those politicians. What were you saying?
Well, if you look at sedition, if you look at, that type of, that's a very strong form of being a traitor. That's a terrible thing to say. I must tell you, I heard it, and I thought it was some kind of a comedy situation. I thought that it was some kind of a skit, and because I couldn't believe that they'd say it. And I watched Democrat congressman and one Democrat senator yesterday on one of the shows. Didn't even want to discuss it. They said, whoa, don't get me into that one. They didn't want to get into it. That is a really serious charge. I'll tell you what they said is, and it was, I mean, I don't know about the modern day things, because, modern day is a lot softer, but in the old days, if you said a thing like that, that was punishable by death.
Yeah, but you're not threatening them. A lot of people are interpreting there's a threat and there's security.
Well, I'm not threatening them, but I think they're in serious trouble. I would say they're in serious trouble. I'm not threatening death, but I think they're in serious trouble. In the old days, it was death.
Do you worry, Mr. President?
Seditious behavior.
Do you worry
that was a big deal.
Do you worry?
Today, nothing's a big deal. Today's a different world. Okay, it's a softer, it's a meeker, milder world. But I will say this: I think what they did is really bad. The hatred is pretty strong. But what they say, essentially, don't follow the orders of the President of the United States. So to the military.
Do you worry that some of your guys are going to say no?
Young privates and young corporals and young sergeants, and they're not scholars. Necessarily, there might be a few, frankly, but they're not scholars. They don't, study the Constitution. It's
Demo rats, that's all. They suck balls.
So true, Roy's Redemption. All my homies hate the demon rats. Get them out. Ban the demon rat party. Mr. Stu says he's not afraid of death nor executing on it if it's in the best interest of the safety of America. Yeah, he's just talking about it like, he's like, what they did was obviously seditious. This is, there's no, you could give me like your legal definitions or whatever, but what they're doing is they're obviously trying to spark insurrection in the military. And yeah, he's like, obviously, like, nobody's going to be able to do anything about it. You're not going to be able to actually go charge them necessarily. You're not going to go hang them for what they did. We don't live in that world anymore, but what they did was seriously bad. Hold on for just a sec.
Et cetera, et cetera. They know that. So these are bad people. These are people that, in my opinion, broke the law. Now, what happens to them, I can't tell you. But they broke the law. That is a terrible statement. I can say if I ever said that and there were a Democrat as president, all hell would have broken loose.
Yeah, no question. So then, listen to what he says here.
Do you worry that someone on the Gerald R. Ford will say, hey, I don't want to do this Venezuelan mission. I don't want to sit out in the ocean. I'm out. Do you worry about them saying, I don't want to go to Chicago and be in the National Guard? I'm out. Do you worry about that?
No, I don't worry about anything like that because I'm a leader and they do as I say. But it certainly is not a good situation. It could happen with certain leaders. It could happen. I don't think that happened with me, but you never know. Look, that was a very terrible. That was a traitorous statement. That was a horrible thing to do. I believe they broke the law very strongly. I think it's a very serious violation of the law. Yeah.
I know Todd Blanche seems to be looking into it. Your assistant deputy, or your
well,
deputy
I think
attorney.
Pete Hegseth is looking into it too. I know they're looking into it militarily. I don't know for a fact, but I think the military is looking into it. The military courts.
And there are, once you get the military courts activated, like there are still people within the military establishment, like who are part of the old guard, who hold military honor and esteem in very high regard. So, I don't necessarily think this is going to result in actual arrests and prosecutions, but there's multiple storylines that are tracking in real time here, where by doing that, on one hand, they emboldened the people who might be wanting to disobey orders and to claim that they're unlawful. They're emboldening them. On the other hand, they're also starting to light up the radar of just good old down-to-earth normie patriots who occupy various positions of military leadership, who I know exist. I've talked to them. I've heard from them. Different ones have reached out to me. I know some in person in real life. I know that there are people within military leadership who are not super political. They're sort of normie politically, but they're like very duty-bound with the military, and they very much respect rank and are going to find it extremely troubling that elected officials are actually advocating that military people start disobeying orders from the president. So that's another thing that's going to kind of keep percolating. So the game that they're playing now is they have to activate their people faster than they activate people against them. Mr. Sue says, posit this, what if Trump himself is the one who executed the hit on Epstein, and the legal repercussions would hit him hard right now if they release the files? The rules and regulations in place and the timing and sentiment of the country is not ready for that yet. Trump has to take care of some business first before they can release that info, if that's true, of course. Interesting. The hit on Epstein was the one who executed the hit on Epstein? I don't think he would have. I don't know. I think, I could see him, if someone being able to make the case to him that they should be, that he should just step aside as they did it. But I don't really see him having a motivation to do it himself. But I still think Epstein's alive. Honestly, I haven't completely ruled out that possibility. There's some very weird stuff around his body and everything that happened with it. Yeah, I don't rule out the idea that he is actually still alive somewhere. But I also don't operate on that assumption necessarily. Pale Morning Dude says it's helpful that Trump paid the military salaries during the shutdown. I would assume he bought some loyalty. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think it runs deep into human trafficking and Trump trying to expose it. Yeah, I do think that Trump is absolutely very well aware of the nature of human trafficking and is very opposed to it. I don't know if that's necessarily the primary motivation driving him, but a lot of people look at him as his association with like beauty pageants and stuff, and they think, oh, he's a total pervert. I see the other way around. I think that he, based on his existence in that world, and then everything that, being in development and connecting with the mob and living in New York his entire life and all of that, I think he's very well aware of those things, and especially the experience with Epstein. I think the way he treated Epstein and then his track record since then, I think it's the exact opposite. I'm not convinced that this is he's been a Manchurian candidate sort of deep undercover for decades now and is doing this explicitly to go after all the human trafficking and stuff. But I think that is something that is high up on his radar, particularly because of Melania. Yeah. What if he liberated Melania from Epstein? Yeah, I'm not going to say that he didn't. I haven't operated on that assumption. But I do think that is a priority for him. If you don't see how protective and grandfatherly he is with children and the relationship that his kids have with him, and you don't like, this is maybe where the autism just takes over. He's very obviously not some sort of like deep sexual pervert of any kind, especially towards children. It's very, very, very obvious. If anything, he's the opposite. And he's like, of all single human beings, he's probably the most responsible for Epstein meeting whatever sort of justice Epstein ever met. Anyways, okay, let's get to this video here from Joaquin Flores with Crypto Rich talking about Venezuela. So for those of you who came in a little bit late, I introduced the video and kind of talked about it briefly at the beginning. So I'd encourage you to go back and listen to the recording of this later. Joaquin Flores is an intelligence guy who I've been following him for a little while now. I remember hearing about him maybe like 5 years ago or something like that, and it just had never really kept up with him because I was sort of not connected that much into that part of the narrative. But then I think it was Tom Luongo who brought him back onto my radar a year and a half or so ago. And so I've been following him on Telegram, and I catch his interviews every now and then. And this one with Crypto Rich is very, very interesting. I'm going to play most of the second half of the interview. I encourage you to make sure you listen to the whole thing and go back and listen to the first half, which is, it's linked in the description here, Puppet Masters at Work. Crypto Rich is a fun guy. He's from the UK, just a very sweet man, very dedicated to the anti-war cause, and very libertarian kind of in temperament. But he's been having some very interesting guests on of late in the Alex Craner, Tom Luongo, Susan Kukinda, Ian Burlingame sort of world. And Trust Planstar said, anyone know what source they bleep out in this interview? I'm not sure. I think it might be RT, but I'm not sure. So I mean, your mileage may vary with Joaquin Flores. I find him very interesting. Him being, in intelligence, and even, I think he said he even like worked associated with something with the CIA at some point, or some sort of U.S. intelligence apparatus. So, once an intelligence agent, always an intelligence agent. Take whatever with a grain of salt. I'm just interested in what he has to say and kind of taking in the hypothesis that he's putting forward here. And the first half of the conversation is good context, but Mr. Stu says the FBI visited Tom's home because he wrote for them. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But sort of my beeswax says, I heard the first half, love the Promethean ladies. Yeah. Okay, so if you heard the first half, he puts forth a very interesting, compelling case that supports this notion that we've kind of played around with here of China, Russia, and the United States sort of merging into an alliance of convenience with each other, with it's like the Strategic Culture Foundation, the company they bleep out. Okay, I haven't heard of it before. I mean, I've heard him reference it, but I don't really know anything about it. That's who Tom did work for. Interesting. Okay. What was I going to say here? So, that Europe is basically the one getting left holding the bag here. And, all of these things, again, all these stories all have implications with each other. But I think that we're going to get some more action happening with Venezuela here very soon. And I think this is a useful perspective to have.
Now, how does that explain? How does Venezuela fit into all of this?
Yeah, Venezuela is has the largest oil reserves on planet Earth, more than Saudi Arabia.
Okay, but it's bad, thick oil that needs a lot of processing and refining.
A little bit. It's used. It's definitely good oil. It's just there's a refining process. Every oil has to be refined. So it's nevertheless, these are the largest reserves of oil in the world. Yeah. So
now he's saying largest reserves of oil. So oil's the first thing he goes to when he's thinking about Venezuela. But this is not oil for the United States.
Venezuela ties in probably more directly to Israel in terms of the geopolitics of the moment.
Okay.
So now the European Union does not actually recognize the legitimacy of the present Venezuelan government. They recognized the moves a number of years ago by the National Assembly. They're in their bicameral legislature, the smaller house, the upper house, so to speak, contra-constitutionally landed upon a character named Juan Guaido.
I remember Juan Guaido.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
real president of the United States, of Venezuela.
That's right. That's who the European Union then believed or recognized, so to speak. And then there's a few other characters since then. Now we have Machado, who just won the Nobel Peace Prize. For what, right? For what peace did she achieve? Well, she's calling for war. She's calling for regime change in Venezuela.
So here's the first interesting thing that when he said that, I was like, okay, so you've got this Machado chick who got the Nobel Peace Prize. Everyone was like, oh, Trump needs to get the Nobel Peace Prize. And then she got the Nobel Peace Prize. And the first thing she did was she kissed Trump's ass, which I thought was interesting. I'm like, okay, so she's running against Maduro, and she's ostensibly Maduro's opponent. She wins the Nobel Peace Prize for nothing, which is like what's the Nobel Peace Prize associated with? What has it been associated with? Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing. It's a way that a certain type of person attributes prestige to someone. We're going to give you a Nobel Peace Prize to elevate you and to grant you power. Well, what faction of the world is the Nobel Peace Prize most associated with?
Israel.
She's a Nobel Peace Prize winner in the fashion of Kissinger and Barack Obama.
That's right. That's right. She's in good company, Rich.
Yeah.
But this is very much, there is the city of London is opposed to Israel's integration into the region, right? So imagine you're an Israeli, whatever class or walk of life you're in, your life is generally going to improve if your country has normal attitudes and normal relations with the countries in the region, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, etc., Syria, right? Iraq, this Manichaean, us versus them, Israelis versus Arabs. This is a dualistic conflict manufactured by the British over the past century and a half. It speaks more to inherited strategies, like going back to our breast cancer, foundation analogy. It's a losing thing. It's a money pit, so to speak. They are evergreening this. They are evergreening Israel.
The breast cancer foundation thing was the example that he used was that they have the breast cancer foundation raises money and awareness for solving the problem of breast cancer. But if you cure cancer, then what do you do with the foundation? So the foundation actually winds up kind of having an incentive to suppress or prevent cures for cancer. You get that really twisted set of priorities. So there's that's kind of what the analogy that he's driving here.
It's non-fungible moving forward. They need access to Saudi oil to fuel their economy. And Israel's economy is not going to function without integration into Saudi energy sources. That's what a lot of the Abraham Accords results in if they are implemented. But Gulf monarchies, for a lot of reasons, basically good, are not fine with the Palestine issue where it stands. They want Palestine to be in some way autonomous. They want it to represent the interests of the people who live there, called Palestinians. And Israel's policy, which former President Jimmy Carter characterized as apartheid, is unacceptable to them. And they have the leverage to change that. And that's what they're doing now. And that's what Trump's 20-point peace plan represents. And as of a few days ago, it is now international law in the form of a UN Security Council resolution. So Netanyahu is still pushing back against this. He wants to break out of this, even though Israel needs Saudi oil. What's the alternative? Venezuela.
Okay, so for Israel to be able to get oil from Venezuela, which would then mean the British and the European Union have to have control over Venezuela, so they support Israel. But before we go to Venezuela, what about the the oil and the gas around Cyprus and all the Israelis moving into North and South Cyprus.
This is great because Rich keeps asking exactly the question that was on my mind when I'm listening to this, because that's my first thought. Well, why does Israel? So Israel's like resisting normalizing relationships, or specifically Netanyahu is resisting normalizing relationships with the Saudis, and he's looking for an alternative source to continue, so he doesn't have to normalize. They can maintain that because the European banking establishment wants to maintain that, which is what he is. It's not that he answers to them necessarily, but he also kind of does. He's been around long enough that he is a large enough power broker in his own right, but he's also walking a very narrow line here. So Venezuela is an alternative to go get that oil there, but then that's why. What about the Eastern Mediterranean oil? That was the first question that came to my mind. This is not the first time that Rich does it in this interview. He does it again here shortly in a couple minutes.
They would like to use some of that and export a lot of it.
What's stopping them from doing that? I mean, Venezuela is all the way across the world. Cyprus.
Sure. I mean, so you think about the refining costs. You think about the transportation costs, which means that it would have to be almost free, right? Which is what Machado has offered to Netanyahu. So Netanyahu is one of the few leaders who contacted Machado immediately upon winning to congratulate her. Machado has been speaking. If you watch all of her interviews, right, there is a disproportionate focus on that we're going to recognize Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel and blah, blah, blah. So that's a diplomatic approach. Beneath that, the economics is we are going to open up Venezuela to Israel. So Israel, like a lot of countries that produce energy, right, are in a better position to sell and export it and then import a cheaper source than the price deal that they get exporting of a different type. We're talking about liquefied natural gas or LNG and other forms. They want to bring in Venezuelan oil to fuel their physical economy, right? They want that oil to fuel, their industry. If they're going to do data, they want oil fueling that. If it's free, if it's almost free, I mean, just cost of getting it to Israel. If they can keep that below, then they have all the deals to export. I mean, there are offshore, they're offshore, technically off Gaza. They would love to develop. It's caught up in arbitration, international law. They would love to have seized Gaza and then ultimately get the world to recognize that they can take that Palestinian offshore oil, right, for export. So, but what So
the point he's making here is that they're trying to get access. This is part of the reason why they want exclusive control of Gaza, because they want to access and control that oil there. And that's a different caliber of oil that they would be able to make more exporting that than they would using it. If they can get this other source of oil basically free, then they can export the higher grade stuff and use the lower grade stuff. So this is part of their motivation. And now I'm enough aware of these different elements that are at play here to smell that there's something to this. There's a number of different facts that I need to now go run to ground to confirm, because it sparks a bunch of other conversations for me on this. There's some other facts that I need to run to ground with this sort of speculative angle that he's taking, but. This is a very fascinating kind of schizo theory to me, that trying to position all the different pieces with respect to one another. Like, who would Israel, if Israel takes the Eastern Mediterranean oil and then they're exporting it, well, who are they exporting it to? And then they're importing this oil from Venezuela. So then there's obviously alignment between Israel and European powers, but then there's also a lot of there's factions within the European powers who are just recognizing Palestine as a state. And so there's so many different factions here that are all pulling in various different directions with each other. And this hasn't even gotten into China or Russia or Azerbaijan. Mr. Su, I think that's sort of what he's putting forth here, that Israel wants to get the Venezuela oil for cheap and export Mediterranean oil for a huge profit. And this would not be Israel per se. This would be the powers that are vying for control of Israel. That's what you got to understand. Israel is a geographic region with a particular population who are basically incidental to the region. They're there to occupy this floating, or not floating, but this not floating aircraft carrier in the Middle East. So there are European and American interests who are vying against other European and American interests for control of Israel. That's what's happening right now. And you could drill down into that, and you're going to find more factions that are not, like, it's not cleanly like it's just Europe, or it's just America, or it's just Zionists. There's probably at least, like, 8 or 12 different major factions you could delineate that are all vying in different directions at the moment. And this is the first time that I've heard something proposed that sort of starts to synchronize things the way that Joaquin is talking about it here.
Yes.
So then, Joaquin, I gotta say, it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I don't know if it's true.
So this is the next question. The next question he asks here was the first thing that I wanted to, the next question I had.
What you're saying.
Yeah.
Because in the end, we're watching movements and making assessments, but it
Right.
certainly fits. It's completely plausible and possible, right? So I'm not refuting it at all. But so then is Trump, by moving the aircraft carrier and the other ships and stuff into the Caribbean, preventing Venezuela falling under the ambit of the European Union and the UK, thus supplying Israel with free or cheap oil? How does that square with Trump's pro-Zionist policies? He moved the embassy to Jerusalem.
Correct.
Soleimani.
Yes. How to square that?
How,
yeah,
there was
those
that
are very
terrible
good
police
questions.
man he had in his.
This is exactly my question as well. So how do you square these seemingly conflicting narratives that are running here? Like, on one hand, you could say, okay, so Trump is moving the military into Venezuela to take over control of Venezuelan oil so it can be sent to Israel. So he's operating on behalf of Israel. Or you could say that it's Trump is moving the military operations into the Caribbean to take control of Venezuela to prevent Israel. Both of these seem to have some plausibility. And Trump has done some things that are like very pro-Zionist. But then he's also done some things that are very anti-Zionist. And so how do you square these things together to understand what it is that is actually happening?
First administration, which would have reduced West Bank and Gaza to Bantustans, like in South Africa. So please square this circle.
Yeah, sure. So if you look at the carrier group and naval group that has accumulated in Puerto Rico, right, where has that force been drawn from? It has been drawn from the groups that were in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Persian Gulf. And those are the naval groups that Israel relies upon to buttress their security and power projection profile. If they were to create a larger conflict in the region, or go back to attacking Iran, or think that they're going to send in the army into Lebanon and they are going to rely upon the United States to back them up even defensively in their aggressive activity, that's not an option if those naval assets are in Puerto Rico. Right. So I've tracked a number of these vessels and they come from there. For example, not long ago, the destroyer, the USS Gravely, was taken from its mission to defend Israel, and it was taken to the United States briefly, and then it was deployed into the Caribbean. This is not just.
So some of these military naval assets that are being deployed into the Caribbean are being taken from Israel's backyard. So suddenly Israel, who loves to do their big, we're gonna kick some shit up here, and we know the U.S. is going to be there to have our back. Suddenly it's not like it's not possible, but it takes on a different character. Now again, is this because Israel, or the powers that are controlling Israel, are they saying, okay, this is more important to our interests here, so we don't need to kick anything up right now, so now you can move those assets over there? Or is this Trump moving these assets from the Middle East precisely to prevent Israel from trying to kick shit off?
Just one case, but it's most of them. And I wish I was in a position to share the infographic with you, but most of the assets that were there in the region have been drawn down and redeployed over to the Caribbean. So while we have this storyline about narco traffickers and having this big battle group accumulated in the Caribbean, right? What that has done in effect is delimited Israel's ability to even wag the dog or to create a situation where then they can rely upon AIPAC or Congress or the dynamics of an unfolding situation or a false flag on U.S. naval assets to get the U.S. to attack who Israel needs them to attack. So that option to start that type of game isn't even in play now, you see, because those assets are not even there in the first place now. So now those assets are there, right? Now, so I'm not suggesting that, I mean, it could be, but I'm not suggesting that the U.S. naval assets in Puerto Rico are there to defend Venezuela from another attack, but rather, insofar as they are there, the narrative of this accumulation, right, also works two ways. So, in other words,
this is something that's really important here. Now, this part right here is primarily why I wanted to play this. You got the build up to it. I laid the groundwork for it. But this is the part that I think is really, really important to understand about these narratives.
There are, at the level of intelligence and congressional briefings, there are congressmen in the United States that are still very much loyal to Israel and are still very much connected to the AIPAC pipeline. Ted Cruz, for example, in the Senate. There are many others, Lindsey Graham, for example. Now, all of these plans in the world, this is what your audience needs to understand. All of these intrigues and plans in the world, Rich, even with a relatively high level of granularity of analysis, will result in several possible realities being manifested or could be realized from that instantiation, from that reality. So there are multiple contingencies that are plausible. There is one desired plan that is not understood by most layers or most analysts because the design of these plans has to be constructed in such a way so that possible outcomes are realizable, and then confirmation bias or subjective bias of the party involved, there is a human element that will cause them to see that the plan that they've been told is the plan, or the plan that they believe that the pieces fit for that plan is the plan, and they're talking their own book. So for example, if Trump were accumulating those naval assets to overthrow the government of Venezuela, install Machado, and then open up the oil for Israel, right? That would be a reason why the naval assets are building up there. So people in Congress and AIPAC, et cetera, in the US, who are, let's say, loyal to Israel or loyal to Netanyahu, to be much more clear, to answer your question about Zionism, right? To answer your question about Zionism, we're talking about Netanyahu as distinct from the future of Israel, right? So this is where we have to separate perhaps we share some feelings or some ideas about the problems in that region and its history.
So he kind of starts he's doing a parenthetical thought and then explaining his parenthetical thought. But what he's saying is that as you're planning out, as you're going through the different layers of intelligence and you're getting to the base level strategists and stuff who are planning these operations, if you have, in order to make something like this happen, you have to get the sign off from lots of different parties. And those different parties are all going to have different priorities and interests and things they're willing and not willing to align with. So the path forward that's going to be plausibly accessible for the most likely success is going to be the one that at the most steps along the process could conceivably tell both stories. Does that make sense? Like, if you're going to need to have the Senate on board with you, and you're going to need to have people like Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham on board with various different things, just using this as an example, then whatever actions you're plausibly going to be able to take are going to have to satisfy or appease the Ted Cruzes and the Lindsey Grahams. No. We're not moving the military over here because we're abandoning Israel. We're moving the military over here because we're protecting Israel's interests in Venezuela. On the flip side, the people who want you to abandon Israel, you have to have a course of action that to them looks like, no. We're not supporting Israel. Look, we're pulling all these naval assets away from them so they're not able to engage in their malfeasance. But both of these stories have to be run forward in concert with each other for this sort of high-level geopolitical brinksmanship. And this is, I think, something really important to keep in mind. This notion that this is why you don't want to completely over-index on one side or the other, no matter how much data you have to support one or the other. Because by definition, there's going to be lots and lots of data to support one and the other.
We have to go arm's length from that and be like, that's a country, this is where we're clear to answer, who are, let's say, loyal to Israel or loyal to Netanyahu, to be much more clear, to answer your question about Zionism, right? To answer your question about Zionism.
Because this is another, and this is relatedly another important point, that Zionism and the future of Israel are not the same thing. Yeah, trust plans are. They have to appease the queers in Congress who can undermine Trump's plan. Right. Did something happen? Did you miss something? You see you guys were saying something skipped? Waiting for the chat to catch up here. We're good. Keep going. Okay, good. So Zionism and the future of Israel, these are not the same thing. Israel is not a single monolithic entity. There are interests in and related to Israel that care about Israel's future in one direction or another that are not necessarily Zionist. You have Israel, the political project. You have Israel, the government apparatus, and then you have Israel, the geographic landmass, and then you have Israel, the population. Each of these Israels is slightly different. And sometimes they all pull in the same direction. And sometimes they pull in different directions. And we're in a period right now where lots of things, the power sloshing around effect, means lots of things are starting to pull in different directions than they've pulled before. So when you talk about someone being pro-Israel, they may not necessarily be pro-Zionist or pro-Netanyahu. Or they might be pro-Israel and pro-Zionist and anti-Netanyahu. Or they might be pro-Israel and pro-Netanyahu and, yeah, that one's probably not anyone who's pro-Israel and pro-Netanyahu and anti-Zionist. But the others are plausible. You could have someone who's pro-Israel and anti-Netanyahu and anti-Zionist. So like all of these different factions have various levels of representation. And as Israel is becoming this huge thing in the news constantly, and their popularity is plummeting worldwide, people are beginning to move within and around these different factions. So just because someone has been pro-Netanyahu doesn't mean they're always going to be pro-Netanyahu. Just because someone's been pro-Zionist doesn't mean they're always going to be pro-Zionist. Just because someone's been anti-Israel doesn't mean they're always going to be anti-Israel. See what I did there? Wait, Matthew, do you mean to say humans are complex? Yes. So he differentiates well here in this upcoming section.
Yes, who are, let's say, loyal to Israel or loyal to Netanyahu, to be much more clear, to answer your question about Zionism, right? To answer your question about Zionism, we're talking about Netanyahu as distinct from the future of Israel, right? So this is where we have to separate perhaps we share some feelings or some ideas about the problems in that region and its history. We have to go arm's length from that and be like, that's a country, they have a legitimating ideology, they have a worldview, they need some transformation of their perspectives for sure, but that ism can be redefined. That ism can be reimagined. That ism can be in the future and starting today, have a new life breathed into it or discover a new dimension that defines it for the coming generations. It does.
So, for example, what he's saying here, like they're a nation with a bunch of complex different priorities, and they've got a people, and those people who are there will have some sort of legitimating worldview, legitimating narrative that they all participate in on some level. And that narrative, that worldview is not fixed. It can change. So what it means to be pro-Israel can change. Just like what it means to be pro-America can change. It can be recrafted and transformed and deployed in a new way. This is where the elite theory bros, they should be on top of this, recognizing how this works. Recognizing that suddenly you have a circulation of elites and they move from one political formula to another. And that new political formula could be a restatement of the same goals driving toward the same end, or it could be different. Or it could be a combination of the two. There's a lot of political formulas that are up in the air right now. And ironically, arguing for the existence of a particular political formula is incongruent with arguing against that political formula. If you are arguing for the existence, this is the Adam Green thing. If you're arguing for the existence of in arguing against Christianity, he ultimately takes a rabbinic Judaistic perspective on Christianity. So he's actually spreading the rabbinical worldview when he argues against Christianity. So by trying to continually reinstantiate the existence of a particular political formula so that you can congeal it enough to fight against it, you're actually perpetuating it. So here's my sort of like really schizo, he's kind of getting into this part, so I'm eager to say it. Here's my really kind of schizo theory, hypothesis that I'm kind of speculatively putting forth, and I'm going to sort of use this as an operating frame and just kind of see how it fits. Because this is getting into a kind of absurd territory. I recognize that. I acknowledge that. But we're in kind of an absurd time. A lot of people think that Trump has been co-opted by Zionism. And I'm wondering to what extent Trump has co-opted Zionism. To what extent is he taking over their political infrastructure and reappropriating it? I'll let that one percolate for a little bit. Listen to what Joaquin says here.
It doesn't have to be malignant. It doesn't have to be us versus them, right? So that ism doesn't have to be defined by another ism per se, right? So that direction, right? In the same way that Trump he's very much not a Republican. When you actually understand what republicanism in the United States had come to mean, in many ways, Trump was like a 90s liberal. In many ways, like Trump is more like the things that Clinton talked about but didn't deliver, you see? So, but the plan works through the plan. He went through the Republican Party to make MAGA. Why? Well, Democrat Party was on lock. It's totally controlled by the Sorosian, Atlanticist, non-governmental organization, geopolitical construct. It's too tethered in and tied in. It was absolutely cut off and controlled from infiltration, subterfuge, or anything. So
by the City of London and its proxies.
Absolutely. I mean, going back to Steele. Steele wasn't just involved in this. He was involved in the Nigerian yellow cake. He was involved in manufacturing this. Not just Russia collusion. Christopher Steele was behind the Tony Blair's claim of the yellow cake, a Nigerian yellow cake. He was behind the Skripal case with the Novichok scandal with the poisoning of the Skripals, the Russian expatriates living in the UK who disappeared. Yeah. So this is very deep. But targeting on your question though, it's a very good one. So Trump has gone into Zionism and split the Zionist right. He didn't align with Yair Lapid initially, or Bennett initially, right? Nor did he take the approach of trying to reconstitute the Israeli Labor Party, which is now called the Israel Democrats. That would have been what a non-strategic thinker would have been like. How do we defeat the Zionist right? Oh, we build up the left. It's like, no. You go into the Zionist right. You divide it from its core problems on policy, right? You can embody and you can possess, if you will, the elements, right?
You're in the UK, actually anywhere, get a VPN. If you want to be able to access all sorts of perspectives that the government thinks are dangerous for you, get a VPN. NordVPN.com/cryptorich. Okay. Joaquin, thank you. And then two questions come to mind.
Yeah.
One is, then it sounds like what Trump is doing is he's actually working with Maduro. You know, there's the pretense, there's what we see on the surface, and what
Yes,
we're
yes,
told
yes.
is what's really going on running the show.
That's right.
So sounds like he's actually working with Maduro.
Right.
Because Maduro would want to make sure that he stays in power and not Machado.
Right.
Right.
So this would be the follow on from that. That if what he's putting forth here is true, then Trump and Maduro would actually have a sort of alignment here, like an enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of thing. And so how does Trump negotiate? Well, he's willing to negotiate with anyone. So he'll negotiate with Kim Jong-un. So he's like, you've got yourself in deep shit. You've got some powerful enemies. I'm happy to coordinate with you and basically take you from your old connections in return for exacting something out of you. You're going to have to bend the knee. And what has Maduro been doing? Maduro has been all like singing John Lennon and let me just give him everything, please. What can I do? How can I earn your favor? He's falling all over himself. And everyone saw the singing John Lennon thing, and they're like, oh, this is him like pandering to the World Economic Forum worldview or whatever. And to me, it was just like, this is him doing everything he can really clumsily to like try and rehabilitate. No, I'm not an evil warlord cartel leader. I'm just look at me. Yay, John Lennon singing Imagine.
And then also that it sounds like what Trump is doing very, very slowly and carefully is a sting against the city of London and its proxy, the Zionist state of Israel. A bit like the sting that I think he's been playing with Epstein.
Yes, yes. So very good. When you look at Venezuela and you look at Trump and Maduro, if you look at Maduro's messaging going back some time, he has described a potential friendship. He said that he likes Trump, that he could be friends with Trump. This goes back over a year. So I've documented all of this. I have all of this. This is all of it is written out. All of this I've published on my Telegram channel at New Resistance. There's a search function. You can type in Maduro, and you can see all the posts I've written.
Follow, by the way.
I've kept up on news. I will comment on a news development, or I will write a little blurb or a little, 500 words.
He has a funny video that he from one of his podcasts he did a few weeks ago that was just reposted in his Telegram, and I posted it in the King Pill Discord. About Trump as the ADHD warlord. And it was pretty funny. It's like 7 minutes long of him talking about how Trump has just been going kind of scattershot from like conflict to conflict. And like, no, we're doing this. Actually, it's going to be this thing. And no, that actually leads us over here. And in order to get that done, we got to go do this and then over here. And the effect of it has been like super destabilizing, sort of in the way that a world war would be without the actual world war breaking out. So it creates all of this sort of kind of freezes everything in place as everyone's like, what the fuck is going on right now? Which allows for this realignment of trade flows and financial instruments and treaties and all this sort of thing. It's very much like a promote chaos to capitalize on. It's taking the enemy's game against them. You create a black swan event sort of thing, and then use the kind of crazy chaos that emerges from it to grab and align a new power structure in that moment when everyone's trying to figure out what's going on.
Word essay, so to speak, describing the strategic situation. I've also written at length for the band website, Band in the West Culture. And I have an article about are Trump and Maduro, secretly allies? This would fit the model of a Roman friendship, a Roman alliance, right? So this is a Machiavellian tacit alliance or friendship. And yes, so what people don't understand necessarily, Rich, is that Chevron operates quite profitably in Venezuela today. They have a joint enterprise with the Venezuelan state-run energy company PDVSA, right? So and
here's where Russia comes into this. And interestingly, Putin just made some sort of kind of bland diplomatic statement describing his support for Venezuela. that was sort of tacitly sympathetic to Maduro. So now we've gone from everyone connects Israel and Ukraine for other reasons, but here we've got Israel and Ukraine being connected via Venezuela and Russia.
BSA in turn deals with the Russians. When Trump and Putin met in Alaska, right, among their discussions was the reopening or new development for both ExxonMobil and Chevron in Russia. You have the Sakhalin 3 offshore construct. You have Arctic projects for Arctic exploration. And so, just leave Venezuela the fuck alone. And all these other opportunities for Chevron and Exxon are opening up in Russia, right, with the conclusion of the Ukraine war and normalization of U.S.-Russia relations.
So having what he's getting at here, I think, is that you're seeing a normalization of, and this is part of what the first half of the conversation and the first part one of this was about, was that the kind of 500,000 foot view of what's happening right now is Russia is being reintegrated into the global world by necessity. This isn't even it's like a pragmatic necessity that it has to happen. And there's mutually assured reasons why it has to happen. And essentially only Europe is opposed to it now. So Russia is being dragged back into the accepted modern world. And it's driven by corporate interests and banking interests and political interests and all sorts of different reasons. But the way things are right now, you can establish a stasis, the way things are with Venezuela right now, and it's going to have major oil implications. So then it's going to have major oil implications positively for Russia through the United States via Venezuela, which means Europe, who is broadly speaking, the EU they are in this life or death struggle against Russia because Russia being renormalized and brought back into the world again is bad for their political aspirations, their territorial aspirations. And so they have an incentive to create chaos in Venezuela to cut that off. So here you've got the Ouroboros happening here, where you've come back around on the tail of the same animal.
So yeah, there's Chevron operates 5 facilities and refines in Venezuela today, and there's the dog that didn't bark here, right? So if Trump really wanted to create the rhetoric and the legal framework for attacking Venezuela militarily such that it would result in regime change, right? So now, just to understand, I don't rule out some optical kinetic strikes on probably anti-Maduro cocaine cartels in Venezuela that are connected to M19 or ELN or the FARC. So that could happen. Those would be strikes on the western parts of Venezuela near the Colombian border. Those would be strikes on Venezuela that actually were taking out Maduro's opponents and narco traffickers in Venezuela connected to Colombia, connected to Gustavo Petro's structures, actually, because he's M19. He was one of the leaders of M19, cocaine narco trafficking Marxist guerrillas from Colombia. So these are all the facts in terms of the organizations and the dynamic of relationships, Rich. So yeah, Trump could do that and then say, okay, we win, yay, right? Declare victory and go home. That carrier group needs to be there for as long as it takes to create the Gazan Defense Force among Palestinian former Hamas elements, the Egyptians, maybe Azerbaijan, whoever else is going to be whatever other Muslim country are going to help the Palestinians and stabilize Gaza as a police and security force as the IDF withdraws beyond phase 1, beyond the yellow line, all the way back to the 1967 borders or the 1950-something borders, 59. These are, Gaza, basically. So the IDF is going to withdraw all the way out of Gaza eventually. And there's going to be a partially indigenous but wholly Muslim security force operating in Gaza during a transition period. So this is what...
So now, given this, it's very interesting. Just before I went live today, I saw there's 3 major storylines that I'm seeing through my notifications and stuff. One is the Ukraine negotiations, where a close ally of J.D. Vance has just been made the one of the chief diplomats on that, along with Steve Witkoff and Marco Rubio and Jared Kushner, who were the ones who negotiated the Israel-Gaza ceasefire deal, and then also the other thing that's happening is now Israel is striking against Gaza again. At the same time that there's reports that the United States is gearing up some sort of a assault against Venezuela. While there's Ukraine-Russia negotiations that are like on the verge of consummating, but European bureaucrats are like dragging their feet and trying to drag it out as much as possible. And Trump has given them the deadline of next Thursday for Ukraine to agree to that. So all these things, it sounds to me like Israel's violating the terms of the negotiated ceasefire right now, which is based on a very similar framework to what the Ukraine-Russia deal is. They're very, very similar frameworks negotiated by the same people. So all these three major hotspots are all intertwined, and it seems very clear to me that there is alignment between the EU and the Zionists against Russia. And then there's alignment between, there's some sort of, the Trump administration does not seem as if they are operating in concert with them. Trump has been closely working with the Gulf states, and his administration leaned on Israel to get the first one done, and they're now leaning really heavily on Ukraine to get the second one done. This does not seem like a just unambiguously pro-Zionist administration. There's some sort of a third party that's happening here.
What Netanyahu does not want, among many other things. So this connects to the Venezuela story very tightly, right? But if that carrier group is there, then that's how we understand in some way that events in the Levant are unresolved. There's also things going on in Lebanon, Hezbollah. They really can't make a government or reconstruct things or have a good security profile in Lebanon while also trying to remove Hezbollah. It's like trying to fix your liver by cutting out your liver. Like, you can't do that, right, in Lebanon. So Venezuela, very easily, this government will remain, right, very easily, and Chevron and will be able to continue its profitable operation. If Trump were really serious or was trying to build a case against Venezuela, why wouldn't he mention the fact that Venezuela illegally annexed Guyana in 2024? Now, they haven't sent in the military yet, but legally they've declared that most of Guyana, where the ExxonMobil refinery and extraction takes place since 2007 or 2008, is now considered by Venezuela to be Venezuelan sovereign territory. You would think that, annexing, this is like when Saddam Hussein annexed Kuwait. This is very similar because the accusation is that Guyana, in their offshore, in the Orinoco, is actually extracting, vertically or territorially in the waters of Venezuela. Saddam Hussein had that problem with Kuwait. They were drilling diagonally under, that was Saddam Hussein's claim against Kuwait. He then asked for permission from Bush to take military action. That he was granted that, but then he was betrayed after that. Then that was the pretext for Desert Storm in 91. Yeah. So that would be, why wouldn't Trump use that? Why wouldn't Trump say, hey, you are illegally declaring that most of Guyana belongs to Venezuela. This is this is against international law, which is a very strong case that it is. I'm not defending it. I'm saying this dog has not barked, dude. This is really strange. Why are you talking about narco traffickers? Like, why don't you just say that you annexed Guyana? Right?
Right. And I posted a video on my new channel, Crypto Rich Politics, with retired General Blaine Holt.
Night, Viva Cristo Ray.
And former special ops veteran Ian Burlingham. And they talked about what else is going on in the Caribbean in terms of the narco trafficking, closing off the coastal borders and preventing the US being attacked by fentanyl, by a drug war. And who do we know has used drugs as a weapon before? Well, it takes us back to the wonderfully humane and civilized British.
Yes, you have a lot of this, and the CIA, of course, played a very large role in this. There's a narco. There's so much going on there with the CIA Plan Colombia from the year 2000, and this was, the integration, the formal recognition that the CIA has a role in control of cocaine from Colombia. The fentanyl piece is very interesting, as as a plot device, so to speak. I'm
just going to let this run out. We got about 2 minutes left in it, so I'm just going to let it run out.
Remember the word, is it MacGuffin? But it's something like this. There is a real fentanyl crisis in the United States. It's not coming from Colombia or Venezuela. That's a cocaine issue. But the CIA has funded a lot of its operations globally through human trafficking and cocaine drug sales, including all of the drugs, opium from Afghanistan, et cetera, the heroin crisis, the opioid crisis of non-synthetics coming from global drug trade. But the CIA has, over the decades, of course, laundered this. There's tremendous money missing from September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11. Donald Rumsfeld announced $700 billion was just missing. And then the next day we had 9/11 and people stopped talking about it. This is black budget money that has funded
I think this is the other thing that it seems pretty clear that the CIA is actively working against the president. I mean, Lissa Slotkin is a former CIA agent. What's her name? Was it there's Mickey Sherrill and Spanberger, Abigail Spanberger. They're both CIA as well. I know that Spanberger was, and I'm pretty sure Mickey Sherrill was as well. I think that the CIA is wholly co-opted, wholly taken over. Which, I mean, it was modeled after OSS, same types of spycraft and everything. So it's been wholly co-opted, I think, and is now actively working against the Pentagon largely, I think. And Stormy Waters has made this point before, that the Pentagon and the CIA have been at odds many times in just recent history. And I don't know if this means that John Ratcliffe is a traitor, that John Ratcliffe is betraying Trump. He's also been a very staunch advocate for Trump as well. So I don't know if this is that he's like a traitor, or if basically they know that the CIA is a complete rogue agency, and he's there to siphon off whatever data and information he can get. I've noticed that Tulsi Gabbard has been basically invisible lately. We got the one report that Tulsi was being moved onto a military base along with Stephen Miller and I think Pete Hegseth and I don't remember who else was there, but there was a few of the cabinet people who were being moved onto military bases to keep them for safety reasons. And we've seen basically nothing of Tulsi for the last few weeks apart from that report.
Whole black empire, a whole dark empire of British American power, that it's not constitutional, it's not governmental elected power.
Yep.
And that makes the United States non-agreement capable, Rich. And the United States cannot have these games anymore, cannot have agreements with Russia or China or anyone. These are big stakes involved, Rich. This is not a game. And you can't have a second shadow government running around breaking those agreements or doing things contrary to your core commitments. So that is what is happening right now.
And thank you, because Blaine and Ian Birmingham also made that point. It's also to stop the money flows, because it's incredibly lucrative.
Yes.
The human trafficking in particular.
All right, guys, XF here. Make sure to.
So go listen to the first half, because I think this second half will hit even harder after you take in the first half. But that's another thing. If you recognize that the United States and Russia and China have mutually strong incentives to begin cooperating and establishing a new order to the detriment of Europe, then one thing that's going to require that is, from Russia and China's perspective, is going to be, you need to get your shadow government under control. You can't have them negotiating in the background against us and subverting us and everything. You need to get them under control. Mr. Sue says, do you not think that there's an America First faction within the CIA, like where Tucker came from? I'm sure probably. I'm sure there's plenty of CIA agents or operatives or assets who are America First. I think that the agency itself has entirely gone rogue. So there's no operational control within it at all. Where do you draw the line on what is part of the CIA and what isn't? What's on the budget? What's not on the budget? Well, which budget? The public budget or the black budget? You know, there's going to be plenty of good people and bad people in there, but at this point, it's just a rogue agency. Okay. The title of the first one, it's Puppet Masters at Work with Joaquin Flores on Crypto Rich Politics is the name of the YouTube channel. You could just go to Substack later on and go down to this link to this YouTube video that I just played. It's Trump and Maduro ally against Israel with Joaquin Flores. And the link to part 1 is in the description of that video as well. Okay. A couple other just real quick things. In the context of all of this, here you have Mexican Deputy Raul Torres with the National Action Party calling for greater collaboration between the U.S. and Mexico to end the narco state. He placed a sign that said, "Make Mexico safe again," and ended his speech by doing the Trump dance.
A narco state, and there's a lot of Mexico
Diputado,
pleading
si nos
for
puede
help.
ayudar. Le pido a todos los... Ya faltan 10 oradores, nada más. Les pido, por favor, a todos, respeto a los tribunos.
That's just funny. A chubby little Mexican guy doing the Trump dance, "Make Mexico safe again." Do we have regime change operations? Trump-sponsored regime change operations in Mexico? And then this as well from Bill Malugin. Fox News has learned that Radio Free Asia, which gets all of its funding from the U.S. government, $60 million per year, quietly began auctioning off a huge amount of its taxpayer-funded equipment during the government shutdown, some of it for pennies on the dollar. This includes RFA-branded HD cameras and teleprompters for starting bids of less than $1, even a newsroom refrigerator. Over 1,000 items are listed in the auction, which is open until early December. The fire sale comes after RFA announced in late October that they were pausing operations as a result of the government shutdown and Trump administration cuts to their budget this year. In a statement before Halloween, RFA said, "When our funding comes back, so will we." I had several phone calls with RFA officials to ask about the public sale of their taxpayer-funded material. They told me it was necessary to stay alive as an organization and have cash on hand in the wake of budget cuts and what they allege have been gaps in funding. They said the administration's unlawful termination and disruption of RFA's timely funding, followed by an extended government shutdown, has forced the company to drastically reduce operational costs so as to set up for long-term success. Radio Free Asia is absolutely a CIA cutout for regime change operations in Asia. And right here, while Trump is negotiating with China, all of a sudden, Radio Free Asia gets their funding gutted, and they're literally selling their newsroom refrigerator to try to stay afloat. Shedding equipment we can no longer use while retaining key personnel and assets responsibly positions RFA to continue editorial operations that hold the Chinese Communist Party and other authoritarian governments to account. Our plan going forward is to build back once Congress and the administration resolve our funding issues. Congressman Darrell Issa has been involved in negotiations to find a way forward for RFA, but tells us he was outraged when he found out about the auction, calling it a betrayal to American taxpayers. "I've never seen such belligerence by an organization that gets 100% of its money from the U.S. government," Issa said. "It's clear they are liquidating current assets out of spite." RFA also alleged to us that the U.S. Agency for Global Media hasn't funded them on time. I asked U.S. Agency for Global Media's Chief Deputy, Carrie Lake, to respond. "What they said is not true," Lake said. "We've given them every single penny that was appropriated to them." I mean, really? 80 cents for an HD camera? This is a slap in the face to the hardworking farmer in Iowa, the trucker in Arizona, the construction worker in Michigan, who's working their butts off to pay taxes to fund Radio Free Asia. There's nothing free about it. RFA says they plan to restart their news operation once their funding returns. I asked how they plan to do that, given they're liquidating so much equipment. They assured me they will have enough leftover gear to do their jobs again in a more streamlined way, if their funding comes back. How very interesting. So speaking of Trump being at war with the CIA, there's another little data point to put up there. Pro tip, Spook, you'll never get your funding issues resolved. Right. Yeah, glad we're all funding Radio Free Asia. Okay, now. It is almost time for the SATURLABE. You guys have waited for a little over 2 hours now. Did not expect it to take this long, I never do. But I'm going to end the recording here. This one will get posted out on YouTube and everywhere else, and then I'm going to start a new recording over. So if you want to watch the replay of the SATURLABE, just go over to Substack. That'll be probably the best user experience to watch it. So I'm going to end the recording here, and then I'm going to give you guys. I got to go take a leak real quick, and I will come back, and we are going to dive into the content of our great Agit Prop Master. We're going to propagandize ourselves. So, I will be back in just a couple moments.